welcome back to the show. Today, as I promised, I'm going to be 2020 viewing Sonic Superstars. Well, I disagree. Sonic Superstars is a good game until it isn't. You'll see what I mean later. But, without any further ado, let's get into it. Since this is a newer game, I will keep spoilers in mind. There will be an unspoiler section and a spoiler section. I will say when the spoiler section starts and put a timestamp on screen to tell you where to skip for just my overall thoughts on the game if you want to skip the spoilers. This game has an incredibly promising start. The levels are fast, fun, and creative. Unlike Mania, this game has all original levels, and most of them are really fun. I especially like the special stages. In my opinion, this is the best way they've been done. The swinging gameplay is fun, and there's only one stinker in the bunch of special stages. There's also these bonus stages, which reincorporate the special stages from Sonic 1. These bonus stages get you coins for a feature that we'll talk about later. I'm not finished. The gameplay is actually really good. The controls are very fluent and responsive, much like the pencil phone in Elf Saves Christmas. Although, ever since Sonic Mania was released, classic Sonic controls and physics have pretty much been constant. Although this won't be the last time Mania is mentioned. But, we'll get to that. Each character has a unique move. Sonic has the drop dash, Tails can fly, Knuckles can climb and glide, Amy uses a hammer, and each character has a character-specific level in the story mode. This brings a nice bit of variety, and the drop dash makes Sonic still fun to play as, even if the other characters have debatably more usable abilities. Most of the levels are pretty fun, and I often see myself replaying these levels and still having a blast. Oh, you'll see. The graphics are alright, they're what you'd expect. Now, I am happy to see a non-16-bit classic Sonic game, but there are only a few stages that I consider to be graphically impressive or really stand out. As I said, the graphics are just kind of what you'd expect. Although there is a very visually interesting level, where you are a 3D version of these 16-bit sprites. And I know that sounds very contradictory, considering I just said I appreciate how it's not 16-bit, but I really like how everything has its own unique look in that level, and it really stands out compared to the rest of the game. And, speaking of looks, I really do like the LEGO skins for the characters. I still think it's surreal that we're living in a world where LEGO Sonic is even a thing, let alone being referenced and playable in an actual Sonic game. And it also technically makes this a modern Sonic game because the LEGO figures are based off their modern designs. Now, I am aware that the LEGO skins are purely DLC, and if you do not have any DLC, you just have the base game, you're not going to have them. But I think it's cool enough to mention. The music in this game, on the other hand, is fantastic! Almost every song in this game is absolutely incredible. This has to be one of the strongest soundtracks of any Sonic game. I mean, listen to this! Now we get to the later part of the game, Spoiler Zone. If you do not want to hear spoilers, then skip to this time on screen. You've been warned. Towards the later levels, there's a huge and sudden difficulty spike. Now sure, every game gets harder as it goes on, but it was just out of nowhere. Now, it's definitely not as cheap as Sonic 2 Metropolis Zone, but there are a lot of moments where I felt like it wasn't really my fault for dying. Then we get to the loathsome bosses. There's a boss in every single level. Now sure, this is something that has been in place in Sonic 3, but it's just overkill in this game. In Sonic 3, the bosses were usually just mini little bosses that wouldn't do too much, but in this game, it feels like it's a full boss fight each stage. It's just overkill. When I replay these stages, most of the time I just usually quit the level once the boss starts. And the bosses aren't even as good as the actual classic games. The bosses in the classic games were pretty simple and effective. Hit them 8 times. You can either attack them head on or wait for a small window of opportunity. It worked perfectly. You got to choose whether you wanted to be on the offense, but risk getting hit, or be on the defense, but it would take longer. It worked perfectly. But in this game, you can only hit the bosses in the small window of opportunity. And there were many bosses where I just felt cheated, because the boss wasn't even using invincibility frames. They were clearly in reach, but the game just said no, and made my hit not count because I'm not supposed to hit them then. This severely downgrades the bosses in this game in comparison to the classic games. Now, most of the boss fights are just waiting for you to finish their attacks so you can hit them. Now sure, you did have to do that in the original classic games, but there was always the option to hit them while they were attacked, or those moments were very few and far between. I mean, the fight with Fang was just tiring and boring, I just wanted it to end. Most of the time he's either attacking or in the background. This gives you a minimal chance of hitting him, and it just drags on and is so uninteresting. And the final boss was a slog. First you have to wait for the Death Egg robot to shoot the correct missile, then you have to hit it back at him, but only from behind or else it doesn't count. Then you have to wait for him to do it again, and there's a second phase where it's even worse, where you're just running away from him, and he does the same attacks a whole bunch of times, and you can't even hit him while he's doing it. Compare this to the Sonic 2 final boss. Other than when he would fly away for like 5 seconds, you could hit the Death Egg robot at any time you wanted. With the right speed, timing, and height, you could hit the Death Egg robot at any moment. Now imagine the Sonic 2 Death Egg boss fight, but you can only hit the Death Egg robot in that small window once he landed and was low to the ground. It would not be very fun now, would it? You'd have to wait for him to finish all his attacks, jump up in the air, land on the floor before you get a chance to do anything. Sound familiar? I know they want to make it challenging, but challenging gameplay comes down to the skill of the player. You can't artificially make a boss difficult without sacrificing fun and replayability. Let's think about Sonic 2's Death Egg boss fight again. To someone playing for the first time, it's difficult, but they have full control over the situation and how they react to it, and have a full window of opportunity other than when the Death Egg robot flies away for a few seconds. And they can figure it out and get better and better until they win, until it's easy for them. That is challenging gameplay done right. Making a boss invincible except for a few small windows will only frustrate new players and bore expert players. But what's with the issues with the enemies? Why can't I hit him? Why is Egg Robo in the background? There is no point to this. But on a lighter note, now we get to the new character Trip. Trip is new to the Sonic series, and Superstars is her debut game. This is where I kinda got Sonic Adventure vibes. Amy befriends a new character that's on Eggman's side, only for them to be good, because Amy helps them. Sound familiar? Trip is characterized as being quite clumsy and shy. She also has quite a unique playstyle. She can double jump and cling to surfaces and roll on them. Kinda like Knuckles is climbing, but on steroids. Her super form is also very unique and an interesting take on the super form concept. Overall, she has a very unique playstyle, and I'm excited to see how it's going to be implemented in the future. She also has her own adventure, but it's more or less the same as the regular game, just a bit harder. But now we get back to those coins. What do? Well, they are currency to purchase parts for a customizable robot. You can then play as your robot in a multiplayer battle mode, and the robot you create will also be a boss fight if you are replaying the game. But I honestly wish that the coins did more. I mean, they're mainly just used to purchase cosmetic changes for a side mode. I really wish they did more, or at least have the robots play a bigger role in the game other than a few cameos in a boss fight. I feel like that maybe they were building the robots up to be something big, but then just kinda scrapped it last minute, and the one boss fight and cameos were all that was left, with the multiplayer mode. I mean, the coins were a huge part of the game. You would do certain things just to get more coins. Like, the coins were a huge, almost main reward of the game. And yet they don't really do much. Maybe like Sonic Frontiers, Superstars will get free DLC with more features and more things to do with these coins, but again, that's wishful thinking. One minor nitpick here. I'm tired of hearing Sonic Mania sound effects and seeing Sonic Mania aspects of this game. I told you to hear about Mania again, but this game uses a lot of sound effects and other little things from Mania, and despite how minor they may be, it feels like it takes away from the game. This game is trying to be different from Sonic Mania, but these sound effects are not doing them any favors. It just comes off as lazy and uninspired and just kinda tethers it to a game that it really should not be tethered to. So, overall thoughts on this game. Sonic Superstars is a good game until it isn't. I'd say it's an overall enjoyable experience, and I give it a 16 out of 20. It's not the best classic Sonic game by any means, better than Sonic 1. Not as good as Sonic 2, I'd say it's pretty on par with Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And, well, so was Mania, but unlike Mania, this is a full $60 game, so I think they could have really just done more with it. So let's hope they add more via free DLC in the future. Why are you being so defensive about this game? It clearly isn't perfect. Ah, so that's why. Well, think of it like this. Would you rather be in many bad games or a few good games? But if no one talks about its faults, the next games are bound to have the same issues. That's why we have to call out what's wrong with these games, is so Sega can learn from their mistakes, which they don't do often, and make better games in the future. Sure, so I hope you'll be joining us in our next 2020 view, where I will be 2020 viewing a very long-awaited game. So, I'll see you then.